part of this work, my friend Lisa, who is going to be here, whom everybody knows, Lisa Epstein, who runs Foreclosure Hamlet and is our leader in so many things. Lisa organized happy hours, and I met many of the people in this group through the Lisa happy hours. And one of the people in the group, when I started bringing my boards to the happy hours and setting them up on bar stools, one of the people in the group knew a director for 60 Minutes, a producer for 60 Minutes, and said, you know, we'd like to get you on, I'd like to see if we can get you on 60 Minutes. So that led to this very strange experience in my life, which was to be part of a 20-minute segment on 60 Minutes about a year ago. That experience, among other things, has led to me not being able to ever answer my phone, because I get hundreds of calls a week, hundreds of emails a week, almost all of them from very, very desperate people. And I have, like Lisa, have spent plenty of hours each week telling people no, suicide or suicide murder is not the answer, that there's good rental properties. we have to get you on this new track so you keep fighting, but it has been a horrible experience in many ways. In other ways, it's been the best thing that ever happened to me in my life. Among other things, I met June Clarkson and Teresa Edwards, our former Assistant Attorney Generals, who were really way too aggressive about prosecuting that fraud, and therefore it cost them their jobs and really changed their lives around too. But other people in this group,
welcome. It's so good to have you here.
Pretty cool.
It's on heroes.
Yes, they are very much my heroes. When I started telling this story, there were very few people who would listen to the story I was telling. In fact, two of the only people who would listen were June and Teresa in law enforcement. I told my story to people in law enforcement who had put me on the stand as an expert witness. It wasn't like I was walking in cold. These were friends of mine. We had had beers many a night. You know, we had worked trials together. And they listened to me politely, and then there was this dead silence. The only ones who asked the good questions, who really followed up, who were really aggressive about this, were June and Teresa. And the price they paid was a very, very dear price, because they had their reputations thrown on the ground and stomped on by Pam Bondi and our treasurer. But those of us in the know, we know better. We know that you weren't bad file keepers. That was one of the big excuses in the final whitewash report. They were bad file keepers. They had paper everywhere. They should see my house. I have paper everywhere. I'm guilty of that. So I'm going to today, first I'm going to walk through the materials a little bit and talk about what's in the materials. Then I'll go back over them in more detail. Every 15-minute segment, I'm going to stop and suggest at the beginning of the segment something that you can do if you want to pursue this issue, because there's so many things that we're working on right now, and there's so many things we need help with. So I'm going to try to lead off a 15-minute segment with that. There's two kinds of fraud that I'm going to talk about today. The kind of fraudulent documents that I'm kind of infamous for trying to expose. And I'm going to talk about that at the beginning and throughout, because that's something that everybody can kind of understand. I've saved the last half hour for the more complex fraud, which is mortgage securitization fraud, and the kind of fraud that our brand new task force that's been in place, what, 4 days now, is supposed to be tackling Schneiderman and Eric Holder and all those others in that big publicity move at the State of the Union address. But I'm going to talk about securitization fraud because it's very, very important. But I'm going to save that for the end, so if you don't want to do that part, you can get up and, by the way, my feelings are never hurt by, I mean, you can do calisthenics and I'll keep talking. I don't care. I had 3 children and I can talk through anything. I did teach law school for 3 years. I was the clinical director at Nova Law School. And then most of my practice for 10 years was a poverty law practice, primarily in Lake Worth and the Belglade area. I switched gears and was a corporate lawyer for over 15 years. Now I have a website called Fraud Digest. So with that kind of background on myself and what I plan to do today, and it's almost, I'll tell you, the next action thing that one could do if one were really interested in supporting this. With the Occupy movement, Lisa set together last month, I think, a candlelight vigil outside a foreclosed home by Lucerne Lake in Lake Worth. And we had maybe 20 people attend that. It was filmed. It was very moving. And what we discovered, that if you have a candlelight vigil in the darkness or the impending darkness, a lot of people who wouldn't talk before because they don't like being the center of attention will talk when the sun is going down and they're almost in the dark. So we liked that because it brought out a lot of conversation. And it also was a show of support for the homeowner and concern for the neighborhood that is being destroyed by foreclosures. So our next candlelight vigil is this Friday night in Lake Worth at a home that is owned by Deutsche Bank. One of the largest homeowners in Palm Beach County is Deutsche Bank. We're going to have a vigil there, and we're trying to bring awareness to the neighborhood that foreclosures hurt everybody in the neighborhood, not just the people being thrown out of their homes. But the one, I guess my overriding theme today is foreclosures hurt everyone, drive down property values. When I show you the charts on property values in Palm Beach County, you'll know that we are really one of the worst places in the country for damaged neighborhoods because of foreclosures. And it's only going to get a lot worse unless we turn things around this year. So one of the things I'm suggesting is that there's always information on foreclosurehamlet.org or foreclosurefraud.org, Michael Redmond's site, about activities. And there's an activity coming up this Friday night. It'll only take about an hour and a half. We're not going to actually do candles anymore. I have flashlights since we almost set 2 children on fire last time. We don't want to do that. So we will have flashlights. We will be outside a home right on B Street, right off of Lucerne, right before you come to the roundabout as you're coming down Lake Worth Avenue. And there's a lot of information on the site, and we'll be talking about foreclosures and big banks and how the banks made the problem, tanked the economy, and the banks need to be fixing the problem, and we need to hold them accountable. So that being said, let's talk a little bit about the materials. On the right-hand side of the materials, I have this page with headlines, Los Angeles sues Deutsche Bank as slumlord. I will be particularly picking on Deutsche Bank today because we've heard plenty about Bank of America and Chase, and we hear so little about Deutsche. And Deutsche is suing me and torturing me and some of my friends. So I'm just have put together a lot of information on Deutsche. And one of the headlines from the Seattle Times, Los Angeles sues Deutsche Bank as slumlord. One of the things I'll be talking about today is all of the properties that Deutsche owns in Palm Beach County. And if you're ever bored, you can do what I do, which is get in your car and drive around to the neighborhoods, to the Deutsche Bank owned homes, and take photographs of the properties, which are in despicable condition. Almost all of them. They're not rented out, they're not for sale, they are boarded up and not maintained. And there are hundreds of them in the county right now. Deutsche Bank this is Huffington Post, America's foreclosure king. Then a little headline from Deutsche Bank, foreclosure attorney David Stern spends millions on Bugatti sports cars. We all know what happened to David Stern. The last one, the U.S. sues Deutsche Bank alleging mortgage fraud. That's the securitization fraud issue that I'll be talking about at the end. This next section in here has a lot to do with backgrounds on foreclosures in general and not so much foreclosure fraud, but it's important to understand how large this problem is. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, there were 109.6 million owner-occupied housing units. Now, owner-occupied housing units, 68.8 were owner-occupied, which is 75.4 million people, and it's really much more than that because most houses have more than one person in them. So there are a lot of adults and children in these houses that are being foreclosed. How many U.S. homeowners are facing or considering foreclosure? By the third quarter of 2011, nationwide, and as I talk today, pay attention to if you would, to the difference between the nationwide and the Palm Beach County numbers. Our numbers are much, much worse. Nationwide, 28% of the homes in our country are worth less than the amount of the mortgage loan right now, often called underwater. 28% is terribly, terribly high. Sooner or later, those people realize, why am I paying all of my money to maintain this mortgage when it will never be viable? And they will also have to work. Or they will simply not have sufficient income to keep paying. As in Palm Beach County, that number is 45%. So there are a lot of people, desperate people in Palm Beach County, paying much more than their homes are worth. And one of the reasons for that is the home values in Palm Beach County have fallen so much more dramatically than the home values have fallen across the country. I have a chart for that in a little bit. In Florida, across the state, it's 48%. So Florida is one of the hardest hit states in the country, the other being California. You'll often hear about Nevada and Ohio, and all of that is true. But Nevada, Ohio, Michigan, Massachusetts, other hard-hit states don't have the numbers we have. We have, so don't just look, whenever you see statistics that have percentages, you have to realize that 5 states combined have more foreclosures than the rest of the country total. And one of those states that goes into that pot is Florida.